In this build-along tutorial for the SparkBot series, we're going to be creating a speed encoder disk that will sit on the end of our yellow TTY motors and allow us to monitor the rotation of these motors. Once you've got FreeCAD open, make sure you're in the part design workbench and left click on create new so that we can create a new part. I'm in the tasks panel here, and left click on create body, left click on create sketch, and we're going to place the sketch on the XY plane. So left click on XY plane and then left click on OK. You can see that we are now in the Sketcher workbench instead of the part design workbench. We're going to start by coming up here to our shapes panel, and we're going to left click on create circle by center. I'm going to come down to the origin. That's where the y-axis and x-axis, so the green line and the red line, cross. And I'm going to hover over the origin, and I'm going to left click on it. And then I'm going to drag my mouse out and left click a second time. I'm going to right click to clear my tool. And I want to constrain the diameter of this circle. So I'm going to left click on the outline of that circle. And I'm going to come up here to the dimensioning constraint. And from this menu, I'm going to choose constrain diameter. And I'm going to constrain the diameter to 25.75 millimeters. And so we can see here in the solver messages that this sketch is fully constrained. And so I can close out of it now. And that brings us back to the part design workbench. And we're going to take and pad this circle out to create a disk. So left click on pad, and we're going to set the thickness of this pad to 3.5 millimeters. Now we've done that, we're going to add a feature to the top of this disk. So left click on that top face, and then come back up to your menu and click on Create Sketch. And that brings us back into the Sketcher workbench. From the Shapes panel, let's grab Create Slot and hover over the y-axis until it turns a different color. Left click one time. Move your mouse pointer down. Make sure that you remain over the green axis or the y-axis, and that is still a different color. Left click a second time. And then move your mouse pointer to the right or to the left, it doesn't matter. And this is going to set the thickness of the slot. Left click a third time, and then right click to clear the slot tool from your mouse. Now I'm going to set the radius of this top arc first. So left click on that top arc, and then back up to the dimensions constraint selector, and I'm going to choose constrain radius. And I'm going to constrain this radius to 0.8 millimeters. And here it says, I got a message that says that there was a problem with the index. So I'm just going to come up here. I'm not quite sure. It looks like some sort of issue with FreeCAD version 1. Left click on that arc again. And we're just going to redo that constraint. So 0.8, and it worked that second time, so I'm not quite sure what the error was. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to constrain the overall height, or I guess the length of this slot. So I'm going to start by left clicking on the top center dot. I'm going to left click on the bottom center dot, and you can see in the left hand side here that these two sections of the arc are being selected. And now I'm going to come back up to the dimensions panel, and I'm going to constrain the vertical distance between those two dots. And I'm going to set that distance to be 3 millimeters. And so there's the 3 millimeter constraint. And the last thing that I need to do is I need to constrain the location of this slot on the y-axis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click on that bottom center dot. I'm going to left click on the origin. So those are the two dots that I've got selected now. And I'm going to constrain the vertical distance. And this I'm going to set to 8 millimeters. So now my sketch is fully constrained. This slot feature that I've created is ready to be pocketed. So I'm going to close out of the Sketcher workbench. And there's that slot feature there. And I'm going to use the pocket tool and create a hole all the way through the disk. So 5 millimeters is enough to clear that hole, so I can press OK to accept that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tool and I'm going to repeat this slot all around the disk. To do that, I've got to zoom in on the slot, and you can see that when you hover your mouse pointer over the different faces here, they change color. So I'm going to left click on the first face that I can see. Then I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard. And then I'm going to left click on any other faces that I can see. Now, there are 4 faces altogether, so I need to rotate my view to see the last face. I'm using the Blender key set, and so how I do that is going to be dependent on the fact that I've got a Blender key set selected. So I'm going to press and hold down on the middle scroll wheel on my mouse, and then move my mouse to rotate the view. So that exposed the last face that still needs to be selected. So I previously let go of the control key on the keyboard, so now I'm going to repress and hold the control key on the keyboard, and now I'm going to left click on that remaining face and let go of the control key on the keyboard. So at this point in time, if I press and hold that middle scroll wheel and rotate the view, I can see that I have all 4 of the faces of that pocket selected. And now I'm going to use the polar pattern tool to repeat this slot all around the disk here. And so the polar pattern tool is up here. And when you left click on it, you get a bunch of different options, but we're interested in the occurrences here. And I would like to have 20 of these slots show up in the disk. So enter 20, press OK, and there we are. So now I have a disk that's got 20 slots in it, and I can use an infrared encoder to count those slots as the gearbox, the TT gearbox, is rotating so that I can track wheel rotation. All right, so that these slot features will do that, but we need to still connect this onto the axle of the TT motor. So we need to create another feature on the top of this disk. So left click on the top face of the disk, and we're going to again create sketch. And I'm going to create a round pedestal. So up here to the shapes panel, click on create circle by center, hover over the origin, and left click, drag the mouse pointer out, left click a second time, and then right click to clear the tool. I'm going to left click on the perimeter of the circle, and I'm going to come back up here to the dimension, constraint, and I'm going to choose constrain diameter, and I'm going to set the value to 10 millimeters. So there we are. And so the solver message shows that I'm fully constrained, and so I'm going to close out of the Sketcher workbench. And now I'm going to pad this circle to create that pedestal. So click on pad, and I'm going to pad this out to 6 millimeters. So I now have a 6 millimeter pedestal. And next I need to create a shape in here that will actually lock onto the TT motor gearbox. So I'm going to left click on that top face, and then I'm going to click on create sketch. And now I'm going to create a interesting shape. I'm going to start by creating 2 lines. And so I'm going to left click on this create line tool. And I'm going to be somewhat arbitrary about where I start this line and end this line. I do want, so I'm going to right click to clear that tool now. I do want this, this line to be horizontally constrained. And so if you don't see that horizontal constraint symbol showing there, you can click on the line you've created, and then you can click on the constrain horizontal / vertical tool, and it will add that constraint to your line. I'm going to create a second one of these lines down below. So one above the x-axis, one below the x-axis. And now that I've got these 2 lines, first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of them and set them equal to each other by using the constrain equal tool. And now I'm going to create 2 arcs on either side of the y-axis. And the important thing about this is it's create arc by center. That's the tool that I'm using, but you want to start each arc by left clicking on the origin first. It's really important that the arc be centered on the origin. So I'm going to left click on the origin, and I'm going to come down to the bottom line there and left click on that line, and then I'm going to place my crosshairs over the top line there. So you see that white crosshairs of that tool. I'm going to left click there. And so those two top lines now are locked to that first arc that I created. And I'm going to create a second arc. Again, I'm going to come over to the origin. I'm going to left click on the origin to lock it there. And I'm going to come down to that bottom line and left click on the endpoint. And I come up to that top line and I put the crosshairs over the endpoint of that line and left click. And I'm going to right click to clear my tool. So at this point in time, I have this interesting shape here. And this is the same shape as the shaft on the TT motor gearboxes. Now to constrain this, I'm going to first left click on both of these arcs. I'm going to set them equal to each other. Actually, I'm going to left click on the, I'll set both of these arcs equal to each other. And I'm going to set this top arc to a length of, I'll set that to 4.4 millimeters. And I'm going to set the height between these two endpoints on our original line segments. I'm going to set the distance between those to 3.9 millimeters. So at this point in time, I have a fully constrained sketch, and I'll just move these constraint numbers out so they're a little bit easier to see. There we are. So I'm going to close out of the Sketcher Workbench now, and I'm going to pocket this. And I'll just choose, 12 millimeters, confirm that the pocket went all the way through. It did. We're almost done here. Last thing that we need to do is we need to create a little bit of a clearance hole at the very top of this pedestal, because there is a shoulder on the bottom of the shafts, the axle shafts on these TT gearboxes. And so we're going to create a circular indent that will fit the shoulder on these shafts. So left click on that top pedestal and then click on Create Sketch. And we're going to grab the Create Circle by Center. Come over to the origin. Oh, before we do that, I actually want to reference this arc here. So I'm going to come up here to the Create External Geometry tool. I'm going to left click on that one arc and then right click to clear my tool. And then I'm going to grab that Create Circle tool again, hover over the origin, left click one time, drag it out, and come up to the arc, and then left click on the terminus point of that arc, right click to clear my tool. So now I have a fully constrained circle that is coincident with the arcs that I created in the previous step. So I'm going to close out of the Sketcher Workbench, and now I'm going to pocket this new shape by 2 millimeters. And that's it. This is the Speed Encoder disc that'll mount on the end of those gearboxes, and we can use an infrared sensor to monitor wheel rotation now.